The elevator doors slid open, and Richard Kensington stormed into the lobby like a hurricane in a $5,000 suit. His phone was glued to his ear, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I don't care whose fault it is. Just fix it," he barked, not bothering to lower his voice for the stunned intern scrambling out of his way. Across the marble floor, Daniel Carter kept mopping, his worn cap pulled low. To anyone glancing quickly, he was just another invisible worker, another nameless face in a blue uniform. But if someone had looked closer, they might have noticed the way his eyes tracked Richard's movements. The way his grip on the mop handle tightened just slightly when Richard deliberately knocked over a trash can as he passed. Then it happened. Richard stopped mid-stride, his polished Oxford squeaking against the freshly cleaned floor. He glanced down at the janitor on his knees, wiping up a coffee spill someone else had left. A cruel smirk twisted his lips. Without breaking stride, Richard pulled a half-empty latte from his assistant's hands and upended it onto the floor. The liquid splashed across the tile, barely missing Daniel's worn work boots. "Clean that up," Richard said, not even looking at him. A hush fell over the lobby. The receptionist, Emily, froze behind her desk, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. The security guard by the door straightened tense. Even the usual hum of the building seemed to pause, waiting. Daniel didn't react, at least not in the way Richard expected. No anger, no flinching. Just a slow, deliberate motion as he reached for a fresh rag and began blotting up the mess, his face unreadable. Emily rushed over the second Richard disappeared into the elevator. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, crouching beside Daniel. "He's always like this." Daniel glanced up, and for the first time she saw it, the faintest hint of a smile in his eyes, not the kind from embarrassment or fear, something darker, something knowing. "Don't worry about it," he said, his voice low and calm. "Guys like him, they always trip on their own ego eventually." He stood, tossing the stained rag into his cart. Then he pushed it forward, the wheels squeaking softly as he walked away, leaving Emily staring after him, a strange chill running down her spine. Because something about the way he said it didn't sound like a hope. It sounded like a promise. The next morning, the lobby buzzed with its usual rhythm, executives rushing to meetings, interns clutching overfilled coffee cups, the faint hum of elevator music under it all. Daniel moved through the chaos like a shadow, polishing fingerprints from the glass doors as the morning sun streamed in. No one noticed him. No one ever did. Until Richard Kensington decided to make it personal. "Where's that useless janitor?" Richard's voice cut through the lobby like a gunshot. He stood at the reception desk, slamming his palm against the marble countertop hard enough to make Emily jump. "I left an important file in the conference room last night, and now it's gone." Emily's fingers trembled as she pulled up the cleaning log. "Mr. Kensington, our custodial team doesn't touch documents unless they're in the—" "I don't care about your damn procedures." Richard leaned in, his designer cufflinks glinting under the harsh lobby lights. "That contract was worth $12 million. $12 million. He spun on his heel, scanning the lobby like a predator. "You, janitor." Daniel didn't look up from where he was replacing a trash bag. Richard stormed over, his Italian loafers clicking against the tile. "Did you clean the 32nd floor last night?" Slowly Daniel straightened. He met Richard's glare without flinching. "I did." "Then where's my file?" Richard's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Did you throw it out, sell it? What kind of scam are you running here?" A crowd had started to gather, assistants peering over cubicle walls, security guards edging closer. Daniel's fingers tightened around the trash bag. "I follow protocol. Anything left on desks gets—" "Bullshit," Richard whirled toward the security desk. "I want this man's locker searched, now." Emily leapt from her chair. "Mr. Kensington, there's no need to." "You'll be next if you keep interfering," Richard snapped. The security team hesitated, glancing between Daniel's calm expression and Richard's purple-faced rage. Finally, the lead guard nodded. "Standard procedure. Let's just check and clear this up." Daniel didn't resist as they led him to the staff locker room. He didn't protest when they emptied his locker onto the bench, just a spare uniform, a worn paperback, and a lunchbox. Richard shoved past the guards to paw through the meager belongings himself. Then his fingers closed around something in the jacket pocket. "Aha!" Richard yanked out a silver pen, its engraved initials catching the light. "My Montblanc, this retails for $8,000. He thrust it toward the guards. "Evidence enough for you." Daniel's eyes flicked to the pen, to Richard's triumphant grin. Then, impossibly, he smiled. "That's interesting," Daniel said, his voice suddenly different, clearer, firmer, like he'd been muffling himself this whole time. "Because if that's really yours—" He reached into his own pocket and pulled out a phone. With one tap, the lobby's hidden speakers crackled to life. Richard's own voice filled the room. Just leave it on the chair. The cleaning crew will dump it and will claim the client never sent the revisions. Buy us another week too. The recording cut off as Richard lunged, but it was too late. The guards were already stepping between them, their expressions hardening. Daniel pocketed his phone. You didn't lose any file, Mr. Kensington. You planted that pen while I was emptying trash cans last night. He tilted his head. Funny thing about security cameras in locker rooms, though. For the first time, Richard looked uncertain. Who the hell are you? The door burst open. A woman in a sharp pantsuit strode in, the building manager everyone feared. She didn't even glance at Richard. Mr. Carter, she said, her voice tight. Your 915 is here. They're waiting in the penthouse conference room. Daniel pulled off his janitor's cap, revealing salt and pepper hair neatly trimmed. He unzipped his uniform to show a tailored dress shirt beneath. Richard made a strangled noise. What is this? Daniel buttoned his suit jacket slowly, deliberately. Due diligence, he said. Then he walked out, leaving Richard surrounded by guards, the stolen pen still clutched in his shaking hand. Outside, Emily stood frozen, her hand over her mouth. Daniel paused beside her. Tell security to hold him, he said quietly. The police will want to hear that recording. Then the man they'd all underestimated stepped into the private elevator, pressed the button for the top floor, and vanished behind gleaming gold doors. The news spread through Skyspire Tower like wildfire. By lunchtime, every employee knew about the confrontation in the locker room, how Richard Kensington had been caught red-handed trying to frame a janitor, only to have his own scheme backfire spectacularly. But what really set tongues wagging was the mystery surrounding Daniel Carter. Richard stormed through the building's executive wing, his face still burning with humiliation. This is ridiculous, he snarled at his cowering assistant. I want building security records pulled immediately. Who is this Carter guy? Who does he work for? Meanwhile, on the 45th floor, Emily sat at her reception desk, nervously watching the elevators. She'd been the one to process Daniel's employment paperwork months ago, basic custodial staff forms, nothing unusual. But now she noticed details she'd overlooked before. The emergency contact line left blank. The way his signature didn't quite match the messy scrawl of most temp workers. Her computer pinged with a new email marked urgent. The subject line made her blood run cold. Termination notice E. Walsh. Richard's revenge had begun. Down in the maintenance office, Daniel sat calmly amid the chaos, sipping coffee from a chipped mug while security guards and HR managers buzzed around him. The building supervisor wrung her hands. Mr. Carter, I can't apologize enough for this misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Daniel interrupted. He set down his mug with deliberate care. It's a pattern. From his backpack, he produced a thick manila folder stuffed with incident reports, dozens of complaints about Richard over the past year, all quietly buried. Harassment claims, financial discrepancies, even an assault allegation from a parking attendant. The head of security paled. How did you get these? Before Daniel could answer, the office door burst open. Richard stood framed in the doorway, his tie loosened, eyes wild. Enough games. He threw a stack of papers on the table, Emily's forged time cards. Your little receptionist friend has been stealing company time for months. Unless you want her prosecuted, you'll hand over that recording right now. A dangerous quiet settled over the room. Daniel studied Richard like a scientist, examining a particularly vile specimen. Then he reached into his pocket. Not for his phone. For a keycard. The moment the black titanium card hit the table, the building supervisor gasped. Only one person in the entire Skyspire organization carried that clearance level. Richard actually laughed. Nice try, those haven't been issued in years. He grabbed the card, then froze as his fingers brushed the engraved letters on the back. D. Carter, Chairman Emeritus. The color drained from Richard's face. His lips moved soundlessly as he traced the corporate seal beneath the name, a seal that hadn't been used since the company went public. Daniel stood, buttoning his jacket. My grandfather built this tower in 1968, he said quietly. I like to walk the floor sometimes, see how things really run. He plucked the keycard from Richard's limp fingers. You've been stealing from my company for 18 months, Mr. Kensington, but framing an employee, that was new. Outside the office windows, the afternoon sun glinted off the city skyline, a skyline the Carter family had helped shape. Daniel's next words fell like a guillotine. Your lease is terminated. Your company's assets are frozen pending investigation. And as for you, He nodded to the security team. "The police are waiting downstairs." Richard lunged, but strong hands caught him mid-step. As they dragged him away, his screams echoed through the marble halls, the sound of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. Daniel turned to the stunned building supervisor. "Reinstate Ms. Walsh immediately, and send up the last 5 years of financials to the penthouse." He paused at the door. "Oh, and tell maintenance I'll need my usual office cleaned. It's been a while." Then the most powerful man in the building, the man who'd pushed a mop past them every day, walked away, leaving behind a room full of people suddenly realizing they'd been part of a test. And Richard Kensington, he'd failed spectacularly. Somewhere in the lobby, a janitor's cart stood abandoned, its mop leaning against the wall like a forgotten prop. The show was over. The real work was about to begin. The penthouse elevator doors slid open with a hushed ping, revealing a world Richard Kensington had never been invited to see. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city glittering below like scattered diamonds. A massive oak desk dominated the space, its surface polished to a mirror shine. And sitting behind it, sleeves rolled up to reveal faded military tattoos, was Daniel Carter. Not Janitor Daniel, in his stained blue uniform. Owner Daniel. The transformation was staggering, the humble slouch replaced by effortless command, the guarded eyes now sharp as broken glass. Even his voice had changed, richer, deeper, carrying the quiet weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Richard swayed in the doorway, his cuffed hands making it hard to balance. The 2 police officers flanking him looked uncomfortable, like they'd rather be anywhere else. "You're bluffing," Richard croaked. His designer shirt clung to his back with sweat. "The Carters sold their controlling interest years ago." Daniel didn't smile. He tapped a key on his laptop and the wall-mounted screens lit up with financial charts, all bearing Kensington Corp's logo. "We kept 51%, quietly." Another tap. Security footage from last night showed Richard planting the pen, very quietly. The police shifted. One cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, we can take him downtown if..." In a moment, Daniel stood, moving to the window. The city stretched beneath them, skyscraper tower casting a long shadow. "My grandfather believed in hands-on leadership. He'd walk the floors, talk to employees. When I came home from the service, I adapted the tradition." Richard made a strangled noise. All this over a janitor's hurt feelings. Daniel turned. The afternoon sun carved his face into sharp planes. Over 3 janitors actually, Maria Gonzalez, Terrence Wright. His knuckles whitened on the windowsill. "James Chen, the man you had fired for stealing your watch. The watch security cameras saw you drop into a trash can." The screens changed again. Dozens of employee photos appeared, maintenance workers, cafeteria staff, security guards, each with a date and termination notice. "My HR team found something interesting," Daniel continued. "Every time Kensington Corp missed a quarterly target, someone got fired, always someone powerless, always right before the numbers miraculously improved." He leaned forward. "Tell me, Richard, how many lost contracts were never lost at all?" Richard's knees buckled. The officers caught him. Downstairs, the news had already reached the lobby. Emily stood frozen at her desk as coworkers crowded around her monitor. A press release from Carter Holdings announcing immediate audits of all Kensington Corp projects. The stock ticker at the bottom of the screen showed Kensington shares plummeting. Back in the penthouse, Daniel finally nodded to the officers. As they led Richard away, he called after them. "The DA has my full cooperation. Embezzlement, fraud, witness tampering." A pause. "And we haven't even discussed the harassment settlements yet." When the elevator doors closed, Daniel exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a familiar item, his janitor's cap. The fabric was worn soft from use. His phone buzzed. "The building manager, should we prepare your usual office?" Daniel smiled for the first time that day. He typed back, "Not yet. The night shift needs coverage in the West Tower." Then he grabbed his keys, turned off the lights and headed for the service elevator. Just another worker ending his shift. Some traditions were worth keeping. The skyscraper tower lobby buzzed with an electric energy it hadn't felt in years. Employees clustered around smartphones streaming the same news segment. Breaking, Kensington Corp shares suspended amid fraud allegations. On screen, a disheveled Richard Kensington was being led into a police cruiser, his designer suit jacket draped over his cuffed hands. Emily stood behind her reception desk, fingers hovering over her keyboard. The termination notice email had vanished from her inbox an hour ago, replaced by a new message marked Urgent Promotion Review. She kept glancing at the service elevator, half expecting to see Daniel, "No, Mr. Carter," emerge with his mop bucket. He didn't. Instead, a team of black-suited auditors marched through the revolving doors, their ID badges bearing the Carter Holdings logo. They moved with purpose, some heading for the executive floors, others setting up temporary workstations in the lobby itself. The head auditor, a severe woman with silver-streaked hair, paused at Emily's desk. "You're Walsh?" she asked. When Emily nodded, the woman slid a folder across the desk. "Mr. Carter requested you oversee the frontline employee testimonies. Any incidents involving Kensington or his staff, we want them documented." Emily's throat tightened as she opened the folder. The first page was a handwritten note. "You stood up when it mattered. That's the kind of leadership we need." Beneath it lay a temporary VP access card. Across town, in a holding cell, Richard Kensington gripped the payphone receiver hard enough to crack the plastic. His fifth call to his lawyer had gone straight to voicemail. The sixth connected, but not to his attorney. "About time," Richard snarled. "I know what you need," interrupted a voice that made Richard's blood freeze. Daniel's tone was conversational, as if discussing the weather. "Your attorney resigned an hour ago. Your accounts are frozen. And your wife," a pause. "She's been very cooperative with our investigators." The line clicked dead just as a guard announced, "Kensington, your bail hearing's postponed. New charges just came in." Back at Skyspear, the janitorial staff gathered in the break room, watching as the building supervisor pinned up a new policy notice: immediate reinstatement of all staff terminated under Kensington contracts. At the bottom, a single line stood out: "James Chen, please report to the 60th floor." The room erupted in chatter. No one noticed the janitor slipping out the back door, a man in a familiar blue uniform, though his cap was pulled unusually low. He paused just once, by the memorial plaque in the lobby. "Charles Carter, 1912-1998, he believed the people make the place." Daniel touched his grandfather's name briefly before pushing his cart toward the service elevator. On the 60th floor, James Chen stepped off the elevator into an office with his name on the door. Inside, a box of personal effects sat on the desk, the same item security had confiscated when Richard had him escorted from the building 6 months prior. His framed family photos, his daughter's crayon drawing, his veteran's medal. The computer screen flickered to life, displaying a video call. Daniel Carter, in his janitor's uniform, smiled from what appeared to be a supply closet. "Welcome back, Sergeant Chen. Heard you have experience with logistics." As the sun set over the city, two figures stood on the rooftop helipad. The building manager clutched her tablet like a lifeline. "The press is calling it the biggest corporate takedown in a decade. We've already had 3 whistleblowers come forward." Daniel studied the skyline, his work-roughened hands resting on the railing. "Good. You're not really going back to cleaning floors, are you?" He grinned, that same quiet, knowing smile from the lobby. "Best way to hear what needs fixing." Behind them, the elevator dinged. A janitor's cart sat waiting, fresh supplies neatly stacked. Somewhere below, a news ticker scrolled the latest headline: "Carter Holdings Launches Worker Protection Initiative." The stock market wouldn't open for hours, but one thing was certain: come morning, an entirely different set of fortunes would rise. The city lights twinkled like fallen stars as the janitor's cart rolled through Skyspear Tower's silent 47th floor. Somewhere in the darkness, a phone screen glowed, security footage of a man in a blue uniform emptying trash cans, his movements steady and sure. In the penthouse above, the same man stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, now wearing a tailored suit. Daniel Carter scrolled through the day's reports on a tablet: whistleblower testimonies, stock adjustments, the first reinstated employees returning to work. A notification popped up, an email from Emily Walsh, already reorganizing the front desk operations with military precision. He set the tablet down and picked up something far more valuable: a faded photograph of his grandfather standing with a group of janitors, all laughing over coffee in the very break room Daniel had visited earlier. The edges were worn soft from handling. Downstairs, the night shift security guards chuckled at their monitors. "You seeing this? Dude's back at it again." On camera, Daniel, once more in his janitor's uniform, was patiently showing the new hire how to properly buff the marble floors. The billionaire moved the buffer with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. At the lobby memorial plaque, fresh flowers appeared. A handwritten note tucked between the stems read simply, "Still listening." The sunrise painted the tower in gold as the first employees arrived, pausing at the newly installed bulletin board. Among the standard announcements, one notice stood out: A photo of that original janitorial team from the 1970s with a bold headline beneath. The people who really keep this place running. No signature. None needed. As the morning crowd flowed through the turnstiles, no one noticed the janitor leaning on his mop near the service elevator. No one saw the quiet satisfaction in his eyes when James Chen walked in, head high, VP badge gleaming, and gave him the slightest nod. And when Richard Kensington's plea deal was announced on the lobby TVs, the janitor didn't even look up from his work. Some storms pass, others change the landscape forever. The mop swished across the marble in steady rhythm as the news cycle moved on. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang. Somewhere else, coffee brewed. And high above it all, the tower stood, not as a monument to power, but to the simple truth Daniel Carter had spent a lifetime learning. Real strength doesn't come from wealth. It comes from knowing which floors need the most attention.